Welcome to the 2025 Naples International Film Festival here in Naples, Florida. For audiences at home, tell us a little bit about your project and then we'll jump right into it.
Well, Jimmy and the Demons is a film about an artist. He has been very inspiring to me. I knew him a long time before I made the film. And I just thought it was the perfect time in our country to be telling this story and in the world. And I think the best way I could describe it is if you think about the film The Agony and the Ecstasy, which is about Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel and how hard that was, except that maybe Billy Crystal is playing Michelangelo. So it's funny, and it's all about him and you know, his process with art and his struggle with art.
Talk to me about Jimmy. What about his story really captured you that wanted you to make a documentary about him? Because he's just a wonderful man.
I think he's a wonderful man too, and he's a very good friend, and we had spent a lot of time, my husband and I and Guzzy and Jimmy and some other friends of ours, and he was very inspiring to me about how passionate he was about his work. And I noticed when we were visiting, I visited a studio a lot, that he was creating this it was for a Catholic collector, it was this very Christian piece with demons, and Jesus Christ was walking through them and carrying a cathedral. That was the drawing. I didn't see the piece, but he had just started it. And I thought that's so interesting because Jimmy is Jewish and he's carving Christ, and I thought, and he was just so passionate about this project, and I thought it was kind of ironic and at the same time beautiful, and he was such an incredible human being that I thought it would be a wonderful story to tell people and give people some hope and just be so inspiring about what he was doing.
Was it hard approaching him? Because I know a lot of artists don't want you in their studio. They're working, they're in their zone, but was it really hard to approach him and say, hey, I really want to document this process? Because you were with him a lot and you see the artwork go from beginning to end. So was it hard to convince him, and how did you convince him?
You know, Jimmy there's another documentary about Jimmy when he was doing this other ginormous piece. It was basically, he did the Trevi Fountain in cardboard. And Alan Stone, who is a major gallery in New York City, his daughter made a documentary called The Cardboard Bernini. And it was all about him making that piece, which he toured around museums around the country. So I knew that he had already, and I'd seen that documentary and I thought it was fantastic. But this was such a different time in his life. That was, how long ago was that one made?
It was like 12 years ago, 14 years ago.
Right. And Jimmy had changed. I mean, he was older, but I feel like he was even wiser and funnier, and we were such good friends. And he was so passionate about this piece that I approached him. Really, I was going to make a short. This was not supposed to be a feature film. And he was all for it because he wanted to remember this process. It was so different for him to be carving wood and not doing, you know, the other art forms that he practiced. So I asked him if I could shoot a couple of days, and he was like, sure, and Guzzy was great, and so I started filming, and I would ask Guzzy to come in because I knew they were such a tight pair. You know, they'd been married 55 years, so I wanted her humor injected into this process, and so we shot for 2 days, and then I looked at the footage, and I was possessed. I was just possessed with this footage. I thought it was so incredible, and they were so natural on screen. So I called my friend Toby Shimon, who is the editor. I did a film called Buck back in 2011 about a horse whisperer, and so she was visiting, and I said, look at this footage. It's like, I love these people, but I really think there's something special here. And she started watching the footage, and I could see her light up, like, you know, bing. She just lit up. And I said, so is it me, or is this something special? She says, I would love to cut this. And so I said, well, I'm going to keep filming. And so I did, and we filmed 2 years.
Congratulations on 55 years of marriage. What about Jimmy that caught you? Because I fell in love with him within the first 7 minutes of the film. What about him captured you that you're spending your life with him?
Oh, back 59 years ago? Oh my God. Well, first of all, I thought he was adorable, hot, sexy, which is, what you usually, what draws you initially to someone. But then he was just like this super complex person, which I think comes out in the film. Very funny, but very, very talented and very deep. A lot of his drive came from his a deep well of insecurity. I don't know if that comes across, but he had a deep well which continued his whole life. So he was always trying to prove himself with his art.
One of his demons.
That was one of his demons. So the film is very appropriate. The piece, the cathedral, is very appropriate because he was always fighting his demons. But what drew me to him was everything about him. And then we grew old together.
He's Jewish. He takes on this very religious piece of art that he's commissioned in, and he does this very well. What I really liked about the documentary, I liked everything about it, but, he takes so much care, in the details. So talk to me about his process and what he told you about, taking on this special project. He's Jewish. He's doing this for a Catholic client, but he takes the same care if he was doing a Jewish piece. So talk to me about his care and why he decided to do this.
Well, and Guzzy maybe could speak to this better, but I know that it was about a year that he had been given the commission, and he did. And you'll see some of this in the film. He kept coming up with different ideas, but it just didn't ever feel right to him, and so. It's very true. I mean, one of the reasons that I always loved Jimmy so much is that I started out myself as an artist ever since I was a kid. I took art classes and I, did some art shows and stuff myself. But in knowing Jimmy, I realized that I'm more of a hobbyist when it comes to art, and he's a true artist because that's all he's ever done since he was a kid, and he never had another job. He did teach art some, but he basically is a pure, true artist. And I was blown away because I knew him, but I had no idea how prolific he was. We just kept uncovering these archives. Even to this day, she's saying, "Oh, I just found this box of prints I didn't even know about. I'd forgotten about," because he would do woodcuts, incredibly detailed woodcuts. Every 3 weeks for the New York Times for 30 years, he did these woodcuts that I'm sure a lot of people have seen. And I was amazed at how it all felt like it came so naturally to him. Like for me, I would struggle and need to look at a picture of an angel or something. And he would sit there and talk to us with his little glasses over his head and be carving away at this piece of wood. There was nothing to reference. It just seemed to evolve out of this piece of wood, which is the other reason that it kind of reminded me of Michelangelo. I studied Michelangelo a lot, and there was this way that it just seemed to flow out of him. It seemed effortless. And all of a sudden there would be this angel or a demon or, the most intricate, if you notice, there's a little belt around Jesus's waist that's
the detail
incredible.
is incredible. And it blows me away, the detail and the care he did. Was he always like that with his other clients? I mean, I've looked his work up, and he's a phenomenal artist. But was he like that with all of his clients? The detail, the care, the compassion?
Yes. He was pretty obsessive about his art and giving much more than anybody ever expected. With the cathedral, it evolved into a much, much bigger project than anybody ever envisioned. But I also wanted to talk about the fact that Jimmy is Jewish and he was creating a cathedral, and he really felt it was about hope. No matter what religion you are. This was about hope, reaching for hope, coming out of devils, hell, whatever, and Jesus, with the weight of the world, the cathedral on his shoulders, and then going, reaching high. And for Jimmy, who studied Torah every week, it was very important to him that he was Jewish, and the meaning of Israel is he who wrestles with God, and I think that's what Jimmy was always doing, which is evident in this piece and in the movie.
How important was it to get that theme of hope? Because we're going through a lot, we're going through a lot of anti-Semitism, we're going through a lot of doubt in the world, a lot of conflict. This film gives you hope. It makes you smile. How important was that, and how easy or hard was it to showcase that hope and not make it like in your face? Because it was very subtle, but very important.
Well, I feel like I've always aimed to tell stories that have hope and inspiration in them. That's always been my purpose as a filmmaker. I feel like right now, with what's going on all over the world, it's hard for me to turn the news on sometimes. It feels so demoralizing, and people are at each other's throats. And the great thing about Jimmy is he does love everybody that would walk into that studio, every friend you would bring over, immediately they would feel like his best friend, and he would grab you by the hand, and he would just, there was something, you can't fake that.
No.
And I thought that what a great lesson to let people see someone that is genuine love, that is genuinely a human being that cares about people, and we were filming during the October 7th, the Hamas raid on Israel, and I came and interviewed them, and it was really difficult. I mean, they couldn't even speak for about a week, and I came in about a week later. And the thing that was so beautiful is, Jimmy was saying it's not like about one side or the other. It's he loves everybody. It's like people should love everybody, and there shouldn't be the wars. There shouldn't be this hatred, and that's what I believe too. It's like, let's just get along,
My biggest takeaway from Jimmy, and I think that I hope I saw this right, is that you just need to put down the phone, put down, the distractions, and like you said, grab the person by the hand and how are you doing, and having a meaningful conversation, because you don't know what people are going through. And I think that's the compassion that Jimmy taught all of us in this documentary, is just to put down the distractions, love you as a human, and get to know each other. So do you think that was conveyed, as an audience member? Do you think you were successful in that?
I sure hope so. I do. But the one thing is, he did have his phone by him, but it was only he would call me, my husband, his friends, all the time. But it would just be very quick. It would just be like, Cindy, it's Jimmy.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say you're fantastic, and I love you, and you don't have to call me back. I just want to say that, bye-bye, and that would be it, right? I mean, and it wasn't. You might feel really special, but you realize he does that to all his friends, but he really means it. He just makes you feel valuable and special.
In the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
You've had a lot of good successes with this documentary. Congratulations. So talk to me about the conversations that you've had after these screenings, and has anything surprised you about the conversations with students and young people and older people and people from all walks of faith?
That has, I guess it hadn't surprised me, but it always feels good when you have young people. We did a high school screening recently. It was in Colorado, and the kids lined up. They got to see about 4 different documentaries that the Rocky Mountain Women's Film Festival had put on, and they just came down and had so many beautiful things to say about how much Jimmy had inspired them and made them want to get back into the art studio. I had a 40-year-old guy come up and say, he's a musician, and he's just like, I really want to just go in my studio and work. Like, he was so inspired me to want to just work and do my art. And we find a million reasons not to do, art, especially if you're in an artistic field, because there's not a 9-to-5 clock. So it's really wonderful to see the teachers and the kids coming up and say how much it inspired them to really work, and a lot of times just to, people say, I'm going to call my sister, I'm going to call my mother. Like, I realize
you got to do it. You just have to do it. Yeah, you just have to do it. So, it's the tremendous skill, but he also tremendous love, and that's his legacy.
You're here at the Naples International Film Festival. It's part of a bigger arts community. What does it mean to bring this story to the audiences of South Florida and to a film festival that really values the arts on all platforms, not just motion picture, not just musicals, but all art? So what does this mean to you?
Well, I do think there's a special place in heaven for everybody that loves art, because, I feel like the arts aren't being supported so much anymore with the government, with school programs are losing their art programs, and so we need to have these warriors that are supporting the arts and believe in the arts, and studies have shown that people, especially younger people who are doing artwork, it's very good for their mental health. It uses a different side of the brain, and Jimmy, you could tell, was always on both sides of his brain. He was an incredible artist. But it's really important to support the arts, and I love that this community, you could see last night, that theater was huge, and it was full of people, and I thought, yes, I love to come to a place where it's a good art group. Do you want to say?
That's great. No, it's just great to be here.
Lastly, what is the website? What is the social handles? How can we follow your successes? Because you've had a lot of them over the last couple of months.
Well, my company is called Cedar Creek Productions, and we have a website, Jimmy and the Demons. If you follow Jimmy and the Demons, we have social media. We have Instagram, Facebook. There's a website, Jimmy and the Demons, and we welcome people to leave comments, and especially if you've seen the film, we would love for people to write in and to say what this film meant to them, because we find it for everybody. It touches everybody in a different place, depending on what's going on in their life. And I feel like it's just everybody's going to take away something different. But my hope is that everybody takes away just a jewel and something to ponder in their heart.